Hello and welcome to Saunders on Security, where we talk about information security and data protection for the busy CISO. And today I'm very happy to have Keller with us. And Ian is the CSO and Information Officer for SBV and also is the former Group CISO for Discovery Limited. Ian, it's great to have you with us. And of course, that beep happens again, even though Outlook is closed. Crazy, crazy.
Undocumented Microsoft features.
Yeah, Ian, can you tell us a bit about yourself and sort of the space you're in on a day-to-day basis, the footprint that you look after in the security space?
Yeah, sure. I've been in this industry for going on 30 years, if it's not more. My arithmetic sort of sucks. I've been doing it for my entire life, and as you mentioned, I've been privileged enough to be the Group CISO for Discovery, which was a major amount of fun, hard work. And now for SBV as a security officer. And our landscape is, I mean, it's radically different to your normal security offer, or your normal corporate business, because we've got a physical security element as well. We've got obviously those beautiful white trucks that drive around with the Big Five, that's Big Five branded. Fantastic organization. We've got over 30 processing centers, a fleet of in excess of 700 armored vehicles. We've got a lot of weapons, which is something I enjoy. Yeah, we're close on 10,000 staff members nationally. We operate in Africa, a few other African countries as well. Yeah, so it's a very interesting space to be in. A lot of challenges, but phenomenal workspace.
Okay, great. Yeah, I must say, a while back I interviewed someone from a similar organization. It was the only IT manager I knew that was armed with a rifle.
Now you know too.
Cool. So, I mean, what got you into the space? What excites you about the space? I mean, you're in a very, like you said, interesting one with the area you're in.
Well, are you talking about into the information security business or into SBV?
In the information security space.
I started off my career in Army intelligence back in the day as a soldier, and that sort of tweaked my interest in what it is that into where we are now. And I remember, I was early 90s. I was working for Deloitte at the time, and security just started becoming something that was getting onto the radar as from an IT point of view. It's always been in the mainframe space, but it wasn't in the IT space. I remember setting up a meeting with a bunch of the senior executives and so on, and told them, listen, things are wrong. And that was very ballsy. And yeah, well, after a while, they told me to put up or shut up. So here I am.
I think isn't that sort of the job of someone in security, to say things are wrong?
Yeah, it is. I have to admit that over the years, I've become a lot more tactful at doing it. I'm not as abrupt and abrasive as I used to be back then. But yeah, the politics have served me well, though.
Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that I've seen out of Europe, I mean, a bit of my background, I work very much in the privacy space as well as cybersecurity. And if you look at Europe, and you're the information officer on SBV side, from the European perspective, the information officer or data protection officer is actually protected so that they can have contradictory views and things like that, and maintain that isolation and safety from being fired for saying something's wrong. So it's definitely, the world has changed.
For the better.
Yeah, for sure. So
eventually.
One of the things I wanted to chat to you today about in particular is incident response, because I mean, with coronavirus and all the stuff that we've seen now, and we've got remote workforces and all sorts of things, there's just been this influx of incidents that have happened, and we've seen in the news recently all the incidents that have been happening from social engineering, from hacks, things like that. One of the things I want to drill down into for this is the incident response plan, and having some sort of plan when an incident occurs. So what do you think is the importance around an incident response plan within a business?
Well, I can, if you don't mind me doing it by illustration of an incident.
Of course, go ahead.
Back in the day. So I don't know if you remember Code Red, NIMDA, SQL Slammer that was here in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
That was before we got to where we are now, where we've got playbooks and all these other things. Our idea of a playbook was a BCM DR scenario, but we never worried about things like security incidents. And I remember when I can't remember which one would hit first. If it was, I know SQL Slammer was the second one, and I was working for the organization. We got hit by the virus, and nobody knew what to do. We knew what to do if an Exchange server crashed. We know what to do when a primary domain controller went up in flames, but we had no clue what to do from a viral attack perspective. And there was a lot of running around, a lot of headless chicken scenarios going on. And eventually we got to a point where we obviously managed the event. And subsequent to that, we got hit by Slammer. And that's, again, reinforced this requirement for your playbooks. And right now, where organizations need to be is they need to have a fully documented and detailed response plan. Not necessarily to say that I'm going to go to this box and I'm going to switch this off, but you need to have that step-by-step guidance in how you're going to do your response. Also, when you look at it from the point of view of your industry work, if you do not have a communication plan, you've also got problems, because you need to communicate back into the market. You need to go to the media, you need to go to your stakeholders, you need to go to your clients, and you need to give them all that information. And you can't do that willy-nilly. You need to have a solid plan for that. Obviously one that's approved by the board.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it as well, where a support consultant has, without the information officer or anything like that, gone and told the people that they were on the phone to that, oh, we've just had a breach. And that was an absolute disaster that happened at that point. But,
it's you need to be very careful, because that's part of your plan. Is you need to formulate your information. If we look at what was that organization in the States? Well, they had a breach, and they misreported a lot of the information because they would. A couple of things went wrong there, but they didn't get the concise information back, and the leadership guys responded a lot quicker than what they got information in. So they were making an emotional call versus a factual one. So if you've got that right process and it's part of your playbook, then you know that you've given your executives the right info. That has gone through to your communications department to make sure that what you're saying isn't in breach of some law, and you're not in breach of any of your organizational contracts. Because a lot of times you're not allowed to go into the media to say something has happened before you let your clients know, because obviously they've got to do damage control as well. So that's critical. I think my document is almost 100 pages, something like that. Massive.
That's a response plan. You talk about that. Going to your clients as well. We've seen it so many times where exactly that, where you have this and then people are emotional, they're concerned, like, oh, and I'm sure we'll see this coming, where people are going to be like, oh, Poppy, be scared of Poppy. But in the process, you breach an NDA somewhere else. So yeah, very, very, very valid point there.
Yeah, I think it's also part of my current soapbox, which is the role of the CISO, is you're no longer just a technologist. You are, and you can't be that anymore. So part of what you need to know is you need to know what your contracts are with your clients, and your contracts with your suppliers, because you can't just go and do stuff anymore. I mean, we've matured out of the 90s and the 2000s, where we could do pretty much whatever the hell we wanted to and got away with it. Now it is so regulated, and there's so many controls, there's so much governance that you need to look at. And the world has gone from this massive thing to the size of a pea. So if you do something now, it is in the media globally very, very quickly. And with the networks that people built up with things like LinkedIn and all the different functions and so on that's around, if you do something wrong, everybody knows about it, and they know about it quickly.
Yeah, that is for sure. And you spoke there about, you've got all these steps and everything, and it's important to follow them, but do you think there needs to be some flexibility there too in your responses? Because different incidents can respond differently.
Yeah, well, if you look at things like a ransomware attack, let's use that as an example. Note, although the result of the ransomware attack is the same, the approach and the attack vector might be different. So you can't go to say that, this is a cast in stone process. Talking at a very high level, my processes have got a defined set. So if I get a trigger, let's say from a cup of coffee that says something has happened, then I've got a certain set of processes that I'm going to go through. But if I get a vector that I didn't plan for specifically, then I go through an additional set of processes that gives me the ability to do customized response. And I think if you build something today that it's too rigid, where you containerize yourself, you're going to run into a scenario where you've sort of painted yourself into a corner and you're not going to get out.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point there. I think seeing some of the plans that are out there where it is that rigid, you will do this, 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 and this in this order. And you often see these, and it could be consultants advising it, where these are the 7 categories and steps that you have to follow, and you have to start with identifying, you have to start with this. And I think that is difficult. We work with a lot of clients where we tell them, like, hold this, but hold it a little flexibly if something goes completely unexpected during this, because you might find that you're being attacked here, but there's actually something happening here as well on the other side of the business.
Yeah, that's a thing people forget. It's even if you go take a look at your DRBCM, it's ISO 33. I can't remember the full one. People forget it's a framework. It's guidance. It's not law. It is something to guide your thoughts and to guide your way of doing things. And also you can't take a plan from, even if it's two exactly the same companies. Let's use the CIT's players. What works for company A isn't going to work for company B. You need to understand that you're taking that specific set of processes and you're using it as a guidance method, because your business is unique, your people are unique, your culture is unique, your business imperatives are different, and you can't do square peg for everything. You need to customize.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to just swing around that as well, because I think one of the purposes of having these plans is to be able to respond rapidly. What do you think? I mean, this might sound like too simple a question, because I think the answer is fairly obvious, but what do you think is the most valuable thing about a rapid response, and why rapid response is important from these plans?
Well, obviously the big win is you are containing whatever is happening. Even if it's a ransomware, if it's a virus, or whatever your disaster is that you're facing, you're containing it, and that's a nugget that you want. That's why you want a rapid response, because you don't want your entire organization impacted by it. So if you can contain that outbreak or that issue to a center, a floor, a VLAN, whatever, you've pretty much nailed the security golden or silver bullet, which is you've done what you're supposed to do. You know you're going to get hammered at some point in time, and you've minimized the damage. And your rapid response is exactly for that. Think about it. It is, why do you have armed reaction at your house? It's when something goes wrong, you're minimizing your exposure by having somebody coming to assist you quickly.
Yeah.
Same thing in cyber.
Absolutely. Now, a word that you mentioned a little earlier as well was culture. You've worked with multiple large companies. How have you seen culture playing out or differing when it comes to incident response and perhaps executing the plan, but as well as that containment?
Well, culture plays a massive role in it, because if you look at, and I'm generalizing, and I'm not talking about specific businesses that I have worked for, but I know of a lot of them. And if your culture is do as I say, not collaborative, you've got problems. You can build the best plans. They're going to just tell you that I'm doing whatever the hell I want to and stuff you. Your culture plays a major role. And also your C-suite involvement. If you are fortunate enough, like where I am right now, and I have to admit, I can sing the praises of my leadership team for yonks. But if you're fortunate enough to sit in a situation where I am, where you have got a trusted relationship, not only with your CEO, CFO, head of or your director for risk, but also with some of the board members, you've got a phenomenal ability to position your response plans, and you can influence that culture to add on to it. Also, having said that, the current business that I'm in is exceptionally aware of risk, and response plans is exactly what we do. We've got response plans for everything, even a flat wheel on or puncture on a vehicle. And so the culture is different with us. In a corporate environment, you've got, unfortunately, you also got a lot of egos running around there. And some of those egos are huge, but
yes, I think we've seen that play out in so many different ways as well. And
yeah,
I mean, it comes down to that culture, I think, of also the grudge purchase as opposed to an actual safety net and doing the right kind of business. Because, the thinking of it, your incident response and even cybersecurity in general and securing budget and things like that, if it's seen as a grudge purchase, I mean, you are going to be scrambling so badly to try and scrape together that whole response plan, response team, everything. Whereas if you have got that culture, as you say, the collaborative culture, it works amazingly. I know I work with a corporate company where we've been doing a privacy program for the last couple of years for POPIA readiness, for GDPR readiness. And it's now got to such a cultural point where even the juniors that have just come into the company, part of their induction is privacy and security. It doesn't matter what team they're in. And it almost starts self-regulating itself, because someone will do something silly and then another staff member just like, oh, hey, you shouldn't do that. And then there's this immediate understanding, shall we report it? And that incident response is instant because you've got these guys on the ground.
Kudos. I mean, that is pure gold. Getting to that scenario and to that status in a business where you've got that ability to be able to do things, and you've got that mutual assurance from staff members, it means that the culture in that organization is such that it is not punitive. If you see something going wrong or somebody doing something wrong, it is a learning environment, it's a nurturing environment. That's a type of place where I think people must be exceptionally happy in their workplace, because they've got no fear of being able to do being able to do that. I mean, kudos to that leadership team. That really wants to be done. And you can't fault that. I mean, that is where organizations need to be. You need to get away from the stick mentality. You need to get away from that thing about, staff members are, or people shouldn't say what's wrong because, it might reflect badly on me. I can tell you that I've done it before. I've walked into into executive meetings, and I've thrown a slide up that is just red. And people look at you and go, but aren't you going to get fired? You're like, yeah, well, if I do, I get fired. But you know what? I'd rather be fired for being honest than putting up a picture that's green and everybody works off that, and 10,000 people lose their jobs.
Yeah,
but that organization has got absolute security gold going on there.
Yeah, no, it is wonderful what they've done there, and how they operate is it's so cool. And I mean, sometimes there could be people that overreact to the security side, but there's still that ask for advisory, which really helps. I'd rather have that than, like you say, things go completely pear-shaped, and then there's a problem. Now, you mentioned something about incident reporting and people viewing it as punitive. I think that's such a key thing around the culture and how that company culture influences things. Because if people suddenly see reporting as punitive and they could end up losing their job for reporting something, man, no one's going to report anything. And then you end up with these long-standing things that have been open and security threats that have been playing out for months because no one's reported anything in the teams that could have visibility over it. What do you think would be some of the, have you seen, I'm sure you've seen some shocks and some reliefs around culture. What would you say are some of the examples you've maybe seen there?
Look, through my journey, I've seen it all. It's I've worked on both sides of the desk. I've worked as a CISO, and I've worked as a consultant. So I've had the opportunity to see it from both sides, and I've seen it all. You walk into an organization that has got the reputation and the name and lights and all of this, and you expect to find, you know, everything on par, going like clockwork, and you walk in there and you're like, whoa, am I in 1920? And there is no patch management, security. There is no security. You can walk through the building as you want to. Nobody challenges you. Everything's lying open. I remember in one company, and it's now many moons ago, we walked in and we were doing a security assessment, and against the wall at that point in time, it was such a cool thing for the network guys to have this full detailed network architecture and diagram slapped against the wall with all their IP addresses for their routers. That was hacker gold. And I walked in there and I just stood there in front of this wall. I took out my phone and I go, click, photo. And you sit in the meeting and you go through it and the people are talking and you go like, yeah, but your router that's over there, that Cisco 2500, yeah, that one. And people start looking at them, but how do you know all of this? Like, you stuck it up on the wall. You've seen that, or I've seen that, people that don't patch, leaving default passwords. Probably my favorite one is there was a security summit held at Dimension Data at their campus many years ago, talking about early 2000s, and there was a guy that did biometric locks. And I was there with a colleague of mine, and he went through his whole hour-long presentation, and we walked out and we got to the biometric lock and we looked at this thing, started playing with it, and it says, enter admin password. And I go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, door open. I'm thinking, and he did that 2 years in a row.
Wow.
Never learned. I mean, you get these things. It's and a lot of the stuff that we see in memes and in jokes now are things that actually happened. It's the password stuck up against you in a. I see you've got a whiteboard there behind you, and there was a photo of the Prince of Wales, not the eldest son of Princess Diana. I forget his name, but he was in his rescue unit. He was sitting there in the pilot's lounge, and he's standing right next to a board that says the password for the system is this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned my whiteboard. It actually is blank for a reason. It comes up in some of my trainings. The whiteboards, I think, are the most overlooked thing in an organization as to where security incidents can happen, as well as like. So something I don't understand, and maybe you can correct me, is in this day and age, guest Wi-Fi. I'm very much not a big fan of it because it is never really, like, it's so rare that it's segregated from the rest of the network, and you will have windows open out into the public street and there's a piece of paper up with the guest Wi-Fi password on it. So security is broader than just that tech side. It's again, that culture and that what's around you visually.
Yeah, it's actually shocking. And I had a chat yesterday with somebody, and we were talking about security and what you can get out of devices. And there was a part of the things that people never think about. You know, it's you work as in the government in some secret base, but you've got a Fitbit. And what happened in the States is all the guys were doing their morning exercises, and they had their Fitbits on because they want to track the amount of calories burnt, you know, being able to have brags with their colleagues. And what they inadvertently did is they mapped out the entire base that nobody knew was there. So when Fitbit was analyzing all of this data, and like, whoa, hang on a second, where's this? And they go like, but according to the map, there's nothing. And it was a US base. And they mapped the complete thing out because they've got all the GPS data where the guy was, or the guys. And talking about that, I mean, part of your security plans, part of your responses is how do you handle things like that? How do you handle somebody coming into your business with where's a little box? You remember the old 20 pack cigarettes?
Yes.
Small box about that size, that thick. You get things that they call now a canary that you can just stick in line on below a boardroom table on the Ethernet cable, and that collects everything. It's got its own Wi-Fi hotspot that doesn't broadcast SSID, and you can do whatever you want to. How do you handle things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A client I worked with, we did a bit of a test on the IT staff, as well as it was a bit of a scare for us. One of my things, one of my hobbies is IoT and home automation. And we use a device called an ESP in home automation space. And it's a little bit bigger than a R5 coin on a board, but it runs off a lithium battery for days. It's got Wi-Fi, it's got Bluetooth, and everything you could possibly want. And we actually stuck one up to monitor the temperature in a server room, but the hardware was never picked up, and there was this little R5 coin there. And eventually that built into a plan because they have a public training area. And then it was like, wait, that could really be a reality of something coming in like that, being pasted under a desk or something with a piece of breast stick. So
yeah,
it sounds tinfoil hatty, but it's really not, and it really happens.
Yeah, it's part of what a lot of people think that what we do is so niche that you have to be one of the big 2 companies in the world to get hacked, and that is so wrong. If you today are under the impression that you are not a target, you are sadly mistaken. And you know, things that I think everybody thought of as holy ground, hospitals. You know, nobody wants to attack a hospital because that's caregiving, that's life-saving. And the hackers are targeting them now because they know they're going to get their money. So
yeah, the first death happened a few weeks ago, I think, from that.
Yeah. Don't for one second think that your organization is safe because you're a mom and pop shop, or because, sorry, Kevin, you run a mine. You know, it's you are not immune. If you don't have this in place, you are looking to get hurt, and you're going to get hurt bad.
Yeah.
So I think on the back of this thing is people should get their plans off the shelf and start dusting them off and see that they actually work.
Yeah, that's absolutely for sure. Last note on that as well. I mean, you say dusting them off the shelf, that you'd be surprised what happens there. I've had a company where we worked on policies, and the policies had to be shipped up on CD from Metrofile because no one had accessed them in the last 5-10 years or something like that. And I think the policy still referred to microfilm when it came to data. So
yeah, we used to call it POTS, plans, policies, procedures on the shelf.
Yes.
Audit, there you go, and then goes back on the shelf.
Checkbox. So going back to that culture around the incident response and all that, what do you think is a good way to build that sort of culture? Like, what do you see as a vital aspect to building a culture like that?
Well, trust. People need to trust that what you're saying you're going to be doing, that you're actually going to be doing it. And that when you tell them, listen, if you report something to us, we're not going to do it. We're not going to be punitive towards you. And for me, that is it. And that's also being approachable. The people need to know that they can get to the security team and talk to them. And they're just human beings like anybody else. Although we've got a nice security title and we segregated away because of stuff that some of the stuff that we do, doesn't change the fact that we human. And if you've got the right people in place and you build that mindset of inclusion and nurturing versus punishment, you need to build that. And because it's like good news. Good news goes quicker than bad news, and it makes people happy. You know, you build that positive culture. You need to build positivity into it. You need to build the fact that people need to pick up the phone and phone you and go like, yeah, you know what, I've got a problem. And even if it's not your job, help. That all of that builds towards that feeling of trust. And when you do that, you will see such a radical change. And again, bragging about SBV, we've been spending I've been there 4.5 years. And in that 4.5 years, we have done such a quantum change, because people would phone me up. I get WhatsApps at night going, "Ian, I just got this. Is it you or is it somebody else?" And that's where you want to be. And you can only do that if you empower people to do what they need to do, and without fear of persecution and prosecution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people get persecuted and prosecuted afterwards, but that's
I think it comes into that sort of fear and hope as well. Like, fear can get you so far, hope gets you that much further, and having a nicer approach to it.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, I think just to wrap up, I wanted to ask this, as a CISO or CSO and working in the space, if you had to think of basically one quick win for security in an organization, what would it be for you?
Do the basics right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can
If you get your basics right, I've been saying it over and over and over again. You can't plaster a building that it's straight up. You need to build it that way. And most of the stuff that goes wrong is basics: patching, passwords, assigning the right privileges to what it is that you're going to be doing. Admin is a bad thing. Stay away from it. Do that. The technology will help you with the other stuff, but get that basics, that mindset. Yeah, it's like you're at home. You don't leave your front door open and the gate and the alarm off and your gun in the safe. And so, why would you do it at work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's what gets me with the basics, is the basics, the tenets, the stuff that we work with is not stuff that's come out in the last 8 months. It's things that have been there for the last 25 years that need to be done right. Closing a port is not a new thing, but
no,
they're
closed by default, open as needed.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
and
great.
only after you've gone through a whole set of stuff and you said no multiple times, as in KNOW, not no.
Yes. Ian, I want to give a huge thank you for being with us today. And, I think this has been a fantastic discussion. Folks, get your incident response plans in place, get that culture in place. And it's not just something that resides with security. This is a company-wide thing that you need to look out for. So, Ian, again, a big thank you to you, a big thank you to the listeners, and till next time, cheerio.
All the best. Cheers. Thanks.